So this is a relative's pond. It's about 2,500 litres. I recently moved some goldfish out of my pond in here. There's about 10 that have gone in there. So it needs a filter. So I'm going to build a bog filter. I've got a container here. It's probably about 50-60 litres. You can use any size container really. I mean, I've chose this one to try and match up to the size of the pond and what I think it needs with the amount of fish in there. I've built similar ones before. As you can see there, that's a wicks water barrel. That's 100 litres. I've done a similar thing there, which I've got on my ponds. I'm going to put it in the corner over here. I've laid everything out on the grass here that I'm going to be using. You've got some Gold Coast chippings, 10mm, some Scottish pebbles. You can see some bricks there. That's to create a little void underneath, and that's some of the fittings I'm going to be using. You've got a 2,500 litre pump there. This is a very simple and basic setup. It can be a bit more complicated, but for this video I just want to keep it simple as possible. I mean, the first thing you need to do when you decide where the filter's going to go is obviously you want it level, so you want to check the ground it's on, see how it sits, you know, and if it isn't level, I mean, what I've done here, it was a bit out, so I've got some stones and some gravel, and I'm sticking it down there and levelling it out to make a good solid base to sit the filter on. Now once you're happy with the base, it all lines up nice, looks level, you know, it's time to start cutting the holes in the filter. This is a fitting I purchased off Amazon. It's for the clean out valve that goes at the bottom of the filter. You know, so when you get a bit of a silt build up in there, you know, once a week you can open it up and drain some of that silt out. You want to be drilling a hole, give yourself enough room at the bottom to get the fitting in there, and the size of the hole, you just match it up and make it a little bit bigger than the actual fitting. Once you've drilled the hole, try and smooth it off a bit and get rid of any of those little bits sticking up, because when you tighten up the fitting, it reduces the likelihood of any leaks. When you do choose a plastic container to use, you want to either make sure that the surface is flat, and if it's curved like this one, you want the container to be pretty flexible, so when you tighten down, it obviously flexes and you get a good seal. Tighten it up by hand, and then attach the isolation valve and just get it roughly into the correct position, line it all up, you know, and then you want to get a pair of grips on it and tighten it up fully. You don't want to over tighten it too much, you know, just a nice little turn just so it squeezes down. You know, you can always tighten it up a little bit later when you fill it with water. You'll see if it's leaking or not. For the outflow, I'm using a 40mm solvent well tank connector. On the 100 litre wicks water butts, I did use a threaded hose tail, because if you want to add hose on there and you want the water coming out, you know, on a different location around the pond, you need a different fitting for that. When you are drilling into these plastic buckets, once that pilot bit goes through, it can be helpful to hold the drill at a bit of an angle initially just to get it through. Again, remove all the rough edges around the hole you've just drilled before you attach the fitting. With this one, I tend to just do it hand tight really, and check for leaks. I'll tighten it up with a spanner or grips if it needs it. I've found that one of these 40mm fittings can handle about a 2,500 litre pump. Once you go above that, on one of the wicks filters I'm using, it's got a 4,000 litre pump on it, and that's got two 40mm holes on there, otherwise it will overflow. So you have to bear this in mind, you know, when choosing the pump and the size of the filter you're going to use. Once that's done, give the bucket a bit of a wipe out, get rid of all those bits of plastic out of there. Then I'm going to put it back into position over by the pond and start thinking about connecting this pump up. Once the pond hose is in position, you just use one of these double wire hose clips to clamp it down and hold it in place. I'm just going to drop the pump roughly in the position I need it to go, and then measure out the hose roughly to where that needs to go. It's not worth laying it out neatly or anything, because you won't be able to work with it until the water's pumping through it. It just tends to float on the surface. Just the other side of the filter bucket, I'm going to install a two-way flow valve. You know, by using one of these you can change the flow into the filter. You can also isolate the filter if you want to clean it out. Again, either side I use one of these 2-wire hose clamps, which are pretty good. The cable has been trimmed to size and wired up into an IP rated whisker box with stuffing glands. And the next step is to fill it up with water, get that water flowing, and see if we got any leaks. Make sure the bucket's level enough and the flow coming out, the outflow, is correct. I wouldn't normally have the outflow so high, but this pond is going to be getting a new liner and some sleepers around it, so it's going to be a bit higher, and it'll be about the right height at that stage. So I've drained the water out, and I've put some bricks into the bottom, and then I've got this large slab here. What I'm trying to do is create a void area near the cleaning valve. This is where the water will be pumped into the filter, and it's also where a lot of the muck will accumulate. So when you open up the cleaning valve, you know, it'll all flush out. Because the cleaning valve hole doesn't sit perfectly on the bottom, it will still get a layer of sediment there. So what you do is when you turn the water supply on, leave the cleaning valve open, it will stir it around and it will get most of it out. Then close it again. You can use pipework to distribute the flow evenly along the bottom, but like I said, this is a very simple design, so I'm just placing the hose there in the bottom so it pushes the water into the void area. For the wicks water butt, I simply drilled a hole higher up than the outflow to put the inflow pipe down. I start with a 20 to 30mm Scottish pebbles and place them in such a way as I'm trying to maintain that void area, not get too many stones in there. I want that to be kept clear as possible. Next is the 10mm Gold Coast chippings that I try and lay evenly across the top of the Scottish pebbles. You want to try and wash the pebbles and stones as best you can before placing them in the filter, because you do get quite a bit of dirt on them. You'll never get all of it out, but when you turn the filter on for the first 30 seconds, minute, just place a bucket underneath and try and catch that dirty water. I placed a few larger rocks near the outflow because it can stop leaves and debris from blocking it. This will require a few more stones over the outflow, but I just run out of stones at this point. With the wicks water butts, I used alpha grog inside instead of the gravel, and placed them in mesh bags so it made it easier to clean because it is a larger volume. With this filter, as it's going to be a bog filter, I didn't bother using any mesh bags because I am going to be putting plants in the top. You know, and the idea is as they get larger and larger, the roots grow down. You know, and I've built one before and I've never even cleaned it. I didn't even put a bottom valve, drain valve on it. I'll show some pictures of that in a little while. I mean, given time, these plants will grow and the roots will go right the way down. And they do work very well. I test the water regularly on the one I've had for about 6 months, and it's still producing, you know, clean water. These are ideal for smaller ponds, or you know, you can do an addition to existing filtration on your koi pond, which is what I've done. You know, you can up the size of the container. I used a 100-litre whiskey barrel. You know, if you want to build a more sophisticated one, there's some great channels out there like Oz Ponds that goes into detail on using a bit of pipe work inside the bog filter and a siphon valve. You know, this is quite a basic version, but they do work pretty well. The version I did in a whiskey barrel looks quite nice. I'll bring it up now. I mean, this was when I first did it. You know, I think this was in the springtime. And over the months it's matured, and it is absolutely full of life, snails, worms, all sorts of life in there. I mean, this is it now. You know, it's quite a nice thing to have on show on the side of your pond. Whereas, you know, the wicks water butts were a bit more unsightly, so you know what I tend to do with them is you know, concealing with plants, which is what I've done with my other pond. You know, it's a little basic insight into pond filtration. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.